However, the one who gives and the one who takes away was already in Egypt to hear his cry and to deliver him. In this Torah portion, you're told in just the first few verses that 70 of Jacob's descendants go down into Egypt. Well, that's another powerful number. 70 is the numerical value of the Hebrew letter ayin. Ayin means an eye, a well, a womb, to understand and perceive. We need that. We need to understand. We need to be able to see something, but in seeing it, to be so cognizant of it that we recognize not only what it is, but what it's about. Amen. Are you following me? The Hebrew word ayin is spelled with an ayin, yod, and nun. Ayin is the numerical value of 70, the yod is 10, and nun is 50. If you add them up, it's 130. That's important because 130 was the length of Jacob's life prior to, are you hearing me, his going down into Egypt. Remember, this is a womb or well. So the 70 represents the womb of Jacob, or the bride that was taken down into Egypt to be exposed to the enemy, to see what she would do. Are you following me? See, you say that you will not serve another God. You say, as for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. But until you've been exposed, you don't know if you will or not. It's also the age of Adam when his son Seth was born. And of course, Seth, Strong's number 8352, means a foundation, a place where something is granted, one is born. The name Seth is spelled the same as 8353, the word for the Hebrew number 6, the number of man. And it's also consistent with the promise of Yahweh when he says, out of Egypt I have called my son. Matthew 2:15 says that Yahweh did the same with Messiah, called him out of Egypt. So not only did Yahweh promise to bring Joseph and Jacob out of Egypt, but he would also find another and grant him a place where he could be brought out of Egypt as well. Can you see that? Messiah. Now, you find that Israel is made to go into bondage. Exodus 1:13 says this, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. Let me just share this. Everybody look at me for a second. You have not yet served with rigor, but you're about to. And I'm going to tell you this much. You will not cry out with a great cry that will be heard in the ears of Yahweh until you have found out what rigor is. Are you following me? The word rigor in Hebrew is Strong's number 6531, pronounced porek, and it's translated as harshness and cruelty. But if you break this word apart, and we're going to actually look at it from two different directions, if you'll allow me. And when you break it apart, you're not only going to see the condition of their servitude, but you're going to see whom they were made to serve. First of all, you'll see there's a pay and a resh. Pay and a cough. Pay equals a mouth. The mouth indicating the voice and words spoken. If you separate it from the next two words, a resh and cough, the resh cough form a word in Hebrew, Strong's number 7390. That word is ruch, which means frailty and weakness. Do you remember Leah and her descendants made frail and weak? Do you remember Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, when it says in the last days that the enemy would seek to wear out the saints, and if you're worn out, you become weak and frail? Am I right? Okay. Well, this word here is inferring weakness, not only from a physical sense, but a moral and spiritual weakness as well. Did you hear me? Now, if you look at that pay resh at the beginning of the word, it forms Strong's number 6499. The word is par, which means a bull. And then if you take the latter letter, the kaf, and attach it to it, it's indicating at the hand of, because the kaf represents the palm of the hand. Well, the bull was the primary sign of the god known as Apis, but it was also the name that was used, or the god that was used to associate Pharaoh. Are you following me? And so the word parek's inferring that the children of Israel were made to lick the hand of the bull, Pharaoh. Oh, you say you'll not bow. But when the oppression becomes cruel, Amos 8:11 says there's a famine coming. A famine of hearing the word. And if there's a famine of hearing the word, there's going to be a famine of food. Prices are going up. There's going to be economic upheaval and catastrophe like the world has never seen. And you'll find out whether you'll lick out of the hands of Pharaoh or not. And it's only when you go and decide, will I lick out of his hand or will I call on the Creator, also known as El Shaddai, my sufficient one. Many will lick from the hand of Pharaoh. This begins to set the stage for an extremely interesting yet hidden truth about the identity of the house of Jacob. And what I'm going to share with you now is proven historically. You may have some questions about it, but I challenge you, I defy you to prove me wrong. At the time when you see this particular Torah portion occurring, the constellational houses, and we've talked about the signs in the heavens. You've got 12 constellational signs. And around 2160 years is what it takes to move through one house or one sign. Are you with me? At this particular time, when the children of Israel are in the bondage that you see here in Exodus chapter 1, they happen to be in the midst of the constellational sign called the sign of Taurus, the bull. Are you following me? This bull has ruled for 2,160 years and has been the icon, the symbol of Egyptian religion. All right? It's just before changing. And when it changes from Taurus to the sign of Aries the lamb. Go figure. The Passover. But in the process of changing from Aries the lamb, you have to have a shepherd in the sheepfold. So you have a connection between the lamb and the shepherd. Now, this is the war that's going on in the realm of the spirit, and you see it reflected in what's happening with Israel in Egypt, because there's a Pharaoh that's arisen that doesn't know Joseph. Are you following me? That always struck me. See, it was far more than just Joseph being a singular character in the history of Israel and Egypt. There's more to it than what you and I have been willing to look and see. Okay? The last plague upon Egypt attacks the bull, Pharaoh, remember? And it's the lamb and the shepherd who does exactly that. But it's also interesting that there are a number of historians that teach that Abraham was at one time one of the pharaohs in this particular land. I don't know if I believe that. Well, if you remember, Abraham's wife Sarah was known as a princess. And if you go back and research history, you'll find that at the time that this is going on, there's a civil war occurring in the land of Egypt between the tribes in the northern portion of Egypt and those in the southern portion. Are y'all with me thus far? And it's noted back during the 14th and through the 16th dynasty that a group of individuals called Hyksos, a nation of people, and that term is interpreted as shepherd kings, ruled the northern portion of Egypt. And if you'll look with me in Genesis chapter 17, I want to read something to you regarding what was said of Abraham. Genesis 17. Are y'all enjoying yourself? Yahweh speaking to Abraham and says, "Neither shall your name be any more Abram, but thy name shall be called Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made you. And I will make you exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you." Listen to me. There was a shepherd king that came out of the nation known as the shepherd kings. Are you following me? And when you look at that, it sort of puts in the proper context when Joseph made a statement to his brothers back in Genesis 46. Let me read this for you. Genesis chapter 46. You remember when Joseph has identified himself to his brothers, and he tells them, "Go and get all your stuff and come on over here. I'll take care of you." Remember? Let's read Genesis 46, verse 31. When you're there, say, "I'm there." Y'all are very fast tonight. And Joseph said unto his brothers and to his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, my brothers and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come up unto me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade hath been to feed cattle. Note, there's a difference made here between shepherd and cattle. Okay? And they brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. Now, that's Jacob's talking to his brother, and he said, now, if I go up and tell him that, then Pharaoh's going to come and ask you, what is your occupation? And he tells them specifically, this is what you need to say. You need to tell them that the servant's trade has been about cattle, not shepherds. Cattle. Are you following me? From our youth, even until now, both we and also our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. Why did he tell them to do that? Because every shepherd is an abomination in Egypt. That was because of the civil war that they had fought. Are you following me? And Jacob and Abraham and Isaac had been part of that. And here Joseph is telling his brothers, don't tell them of your lineage, your ancestry. Tell them that you've been dealing with cattle, not shepherds. Now, if you will take this and you will look at it, and in the place of cattle and sheepfold, put the constellational names. Here's what it would say. Well, let me read you verse 32 again. And the men are shepherds, for their trade hath been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. How much time do I have on this side? Are y'all enjoying yourself? Okay. The word for trade here, let me just break that down for you, is Strong's number 4735, mikneh, which means a foreman, one who drives. Did you hear me? So they're shepherds, but it's saying here that they're one that drives or pushes cattle. Well, the cattle, wait a minute now, this is associated with the primary religion of Egypt. It's closely related to 4731, Machel, which is a rod or a staff just used to cut covenants, and it's associated with divining and religion. So if you place the zodiacal signs in the places that they should be, it literally could say, tell him that the men are Aryans, the house of Aries, shepherd kings, and that their religious obligation is to convert the followers of the bull, Taurus, and Pharaoh. No wonder Pharaoh didn't want them in Egypt. Are you seeing it? See, there's a spiritual battle being fought. There's a transition in the procession of the equinox. It's going from the sign of Taurus to the sign of Aries. Are y'all seeing this? The lamb. Now, this is important because Joseph hinted at this earlier when he hid the cup of divination in his brother's sack. He's trying to expose to them who he is. Listen, I'm part of the shepherd kings. They missed it. It wasn't until he identified himself later, I believe by speaking Hebrew, the language of the Torah, that they finally understood. So what we do is we find Israel going down into Egypt as shepherd kings. But they hide their identity and compromise their obligation to Yahweh and become enslaved to the bull. They're made to serve him with rigor. Oh, that wouldn't happen to us. This is exactly where the church is today. Rather than converting the enemy, we became weak and frail and feed at the hand of the golden calf, bull of prosperity. If the Pharaoh's prosperous and you're not, you'll lick out of his hand. The last day Pharaoh will not allow us to share the truth of the shepherd and the shepherd king, the lamb with those of Egypt who will bow to the bull. Ironically, the sign of Taurus, the bull, represents Messiah as well in Hebrew, because in Hebrew he's called the Reem, the bull who will shatter his enemies. The latter day Pharaoh will set himself up also as this bull, this Pharaoh, only to be broken. And the sign of the constellation Taurus, specifically in the house of Orion the hunter, you saw just December the 21st, at the height of the winter solstice, a lunar eclipse. In the club of Orion, the moon appeared. It was also in the constellation of Taurus, the bull. Yahweh's telling you, this bull is going to shatter the enemies of the sheepfold. In Messiah's day, that equinox that had moved through the precession. It went from Taurus to Aries. When Yeshua arrives on the scene, it moves from Aries to Pisces. And if you remember